First Contact and Conflict. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that dominated the center of the room. The swirling mass of alien vessels before them was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. After centuries of wondering if we were alone in the universe, first contact had finally arrived, and it was overwhelming. Status report. Alina barked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Lieutenant Commander Jax Chen, her second in command, responded without taking his eyes off his console. The alien fleet is holding position, Captain. No signs of aggressive maneuvers, but they're not responding to our hails either. Alina nodded, her mind racing through the countless first contact scenarios they had drilled during training. None of them quite matched the reality of the situation. The sheer scale of the alien presence was staggering. Hundreds of ships of various sizes and configurations, all arrayed in a formation that spoke of both military precision and unfathomable technological advancement. Keep trying all frequencies, she ordered. And make sure our translators are running at full capacity. The moment they decide to talk, I want to understand what they're saying. As the minutes ticked by, tension on the bridge continued to mount. The silence from the alien fleet was unnerving, their motives inscrutable. Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they were being studied, analyzed like specimens under a microscope. Suddenly, a burst of static erupted from the communication array, causing everyone on the bridge to jump. A series of clicks, whistles, and low hums filled the air, gradually coalescing into recognizable speech as the translation software kicked in. Unidentified vessels, a deep, resonant voice boomed through the speakers. You have entered the sovereign territory of the Galactic Confederation. State your intentions immediately. Alina took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders before responding. This is Captain Alina Reyes of the United Earth Ship Horizon. We come in peace, seeking peaceful contact and exchange of knowledge with other sentient species. There was a long pause, during which Alina could almost feel the weight of alien scrutiny upon them. When the voice spoke again, it carried a note of surprise, and perhaps a hint of concern. United Earth, we have no record of your species or its claim to this sector. Prepare to be boarded for inspection and cataloging. Alarm bells went off in Alina's head. Negative, she responded firmly. We will not submit to boarding. We are an independent species exercising our right to peaceful exploration of space. We request a diplomatic meeting to discuss. The alien voice cut her off, its tone now sharp with authority. You will comply, or you will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. You have one planetary rotation to prepare for inspection. The communication cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Well, Jack said, breaking the tension, that could have gone better. Alina's mind was already racing, weighing their options. They were grossly outgunned and in unknown territory. Fighting wasn't an option, but neither was rolling over and potentially compromising Earth's security. Send an emergency burst transmission to Earth Command, she ordered. Inform them of the situation and request immediate backup. In the meantime, we need to buy ourselves some time. As the hours ticked by, Alina and her crew worked tirelessly to prepare for all contingencies. They analyzed every scrap of data they could gather on the alien fleet, searching for weaknesses or signs of their true intentions. Meanwhile, diplomatic officers crafted carefully worded messages, attempting to open a dialogue and avoid conflict. But as the deadline approached, it became clear that the Galactic Confederation had no interest in negotiation. Their demands remained unchanged. Submit to boarding and inspection, or face the consequences. With less than an hour remaining, Alina made her decision. Prepare for emergency jump, she announced to her crew. We're getting out of here and regrouping with the rest of the fleet. Just as they were initiating the jump sequence, alarms blared across the ship. Multiple incoming projectiles. Jack shouted. They're trying to disable our engines. Evasive maneuvers, Alina commanded, gripping her chair as the ship lurched to the side. Get us out of here. Now. The horizon shuddered as it accelerated to faster-than-light speeds, narrowly avoiding the barrage of alien weapons fire. As the stars stretched into streaks of light around them, Alina allowed herself a moment of relief. They had escaped, but at what cost? The incident in what would come to be known as the Arcturus sector marked the beginning of a tense and complicated relationship between humanity and the Galactic Confederation. Over the following months, similar encounters played out across the fringes of human-explored space. Each time, the pattern was the same. Confederation forces demanded compliance, humans resisted, and tensions escalated. Despite efforts at diplomatic resolution, cultural misunderstandings and mutual suspicion continued to plague interactions between the two sides. The Confederation, a vast collective of alien species that had maintained relative peace in the galaxy for millennia, viewed humanity as a potential threat. A young, aggressive species expanding rapidly into space without regard for established cosmic order. Humans, for their part, bristled at the Confederation's attempts to curtail their expansion and impose their authority. Centuries of science fiction had prepared humanity for first contact, but not for the reality of being treated as inferior, potentially dangerous newcomers to a galaxy that had long since been divided up among other species. The situation came to a head 18 months after first contact, in a remote star system on the edge of human space. A small research outpost, established to study a unique stellar phenomenon, found itself caught in the crossfire between Confederation peacekeeping forces and a group of isolationist aliens known as the Vorkai. Dr. Samira Patel, the lead researcher at the outpost, sent out a distress call as Vorkai ships began firing on the Confederation fleet. "This is Outpost Sigma 9 calling any human vessels in range. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Requesting immediate evacuation." The closest human ship, a military patrol vessel called the UES Defiant, responded to the call. Captain Marcus Chen, a decorated veteran of Earth's pre-contact conflicts, didn't hesitate to jump into the fray. "This is the UES Defiant to Outpost Sigma 9, he transmitted as his ship dropped out of FTL. "We're here to get you out. Hang tight." But as the Defiant approached the outpost, it found itself caught in a three-way battle. The Confederation ships, mistaking the human vessel for Vorkai reinforcements, opened fire. The Vorkai, seeing an opportunity, redoubled their assault on both the Confederation and human ships. In the chaos that followed, Captain Chen's training and the Defiant's advanced human technology proved unexpectedly effective against both alien forces. Innovative tactics and weaponry, developed in isolation from the rest of the galaxy, caught the aliens off guard. As the battle raged, Chen managed to coordinate with Dr. Paddle to evacuate the outpost personnel. But just as the last shuttle was docking with the Defiant, a stray shot from a Confederation cruiser struck the research station's power core. The resulting explosion ripped through space, damaging ships on all sides and sending out a shockwave of exotic particles from the very phenomenon the outpost had been studying. In the aftermath, as the surviving ships limped away from the battlefield, it was clear that a line had been crossed. The Battle of Sigma 9, as it came to be known, was the spark that ignited full-scale war between humanity and the Galactic Confederation. News of the conflict spread rapidly on both sides, fanning the flames of fear and resentment that had been building since first contact. On Earth and its colonies, the attack on a civilian research outpost was seen as proof of the Confederation's hostile intentions. Recruitment offices were flooded with volunteers eager to defend human space against alien aggression. Political leaders, who had counseled patience and diplomacy in dealing with the Confederation, now found themselves pushed toward a more militant stance by public opinion. In the halls of the Confederation's Grand Assembly, the battle was portrayed differently. Human interference in a legitimate peacekeeping operation, coupled with their unexpected military prowess, was held up as evidence that this young species was too dangerous to be allowed free rein in the galaxy. Zaxril, a senior diplomat of the aquatic Neri species, addressed the assembly with passion. We extended a hand in peace, offering to guide these humans into the cosmic community, he burbled through his translator. They responded with violence and chaos. We cannot allow this threat to spread further. For the safety of all civilized species, humanity must be contained. As the assembly erupted into shouts of agreement and debate, the wheels of war began to turn. Confederation fleets mobilized, pushing into human-controlled space with the stated goal of pacification and integration. Humanity, outgunned but not outmatched, prepared to defend its hard-won territory among the stars. In the months that followed, battles raged across dozens of star systems. The war that many had thought would be a swift victory for the numerically and technologically superior Confederation forces instead became a grueling conflict that tested both sides to their limits. Humanity, fighting for its very existence, demonstrated a level of adaptability and innovation that shocked their alien opponents. Tactics and technologies developed for terrestrial warfare were rapidly modified for space combat, often with devastating effect. The same drive that had taken humans from their first powered flight to landing on their moon in less than 7 decades now propelled them to incredible feats of martial ingenuity. But the cost was immense. Colonies were razed, ships were destroyed by the hundreds, and the death toll mounted on both sides. The galaxy, which had known relative peace for centuries under the Confederation's guidance, was plunged into a conflict unlike any in living memory. As the first year of the war drew to a close, neither side could claim a decisive advantage. The initial push by Confederation forces had been blunted, but humanity's counter-offensives had stalled in the face of alien reinforcements. The stage was set for a prolonged, brutal conflict that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy and force both humans and aliens to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and each other. On the bridge of the UES horizon, now scared by numerous battles, Captain Alina Reyes stared out at the starfield before her. The ship that had made first contact was now on the front lines of humanity's first interstellar war. As she prepared to lead her fleet into yet another engagement, Alina couldn't help but wonder, was this the inevitable result of humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage? Or could things have gone differently? The answer, she knew, would be written in the stars, and in the blood of countless beings across the cosmos. The price of victory. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood before the holographic display in the war room of Lunar Command, her face illuminated by the swirling galaxies and pulsing red dots that represented the current state of the conflict. 2 years into the war with the Galactic Confederation, and humanity had proven itself far more resilient than anyone, human or alien, had anticipated. Status report, Tanaka barked, her eyes never leaving the display. Colonel Emeka Okafor, her chief strategist, stepped forward. We've successfully pushed back Confederation forces in the Arcturus and Procyon sectors. Admiral, our new quantum entanglement drives are giving us a significant advantage in mobility. Tanaka nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The quantum drives were just one of many innovations born from the crucible of war. Humanity's scientific community, galvanized by the existential threat, had made decades of advancement in mere months. And what of Project Thunderbolt? She asked, referring to the top-secret weapons program that promised to turn the tide of the war definitively in humanity's favor. Okafor's expression tightened. Initial tests are promising, but we're still struggling with power regulation. If we can't solve that issue, we risk burning out our ships with each shot. Tanaka sighed, the weight of command heavy on her shoulders. Keep working on it. We need every advantage we can get. As if to underscore her point, a new alert flashed on the display. A Confederation fleet had been detected approaching the colony on Epsilon Eridani. It was larger than any they'd encountered before, a clear sign that the aliens were escalating their efforts. Looks like they're not ready to throw in the towel just yet, Tanaka muttered. Prepare the 3rd and 5th fleets for immediate deployment. We can't lose Epsilon Eridani. As orders were relayed and ships prepared for battle, Tanaka couldn't help but reflect on the strange turn of events that had led humanity to this point. When the war began, most had expected a swift defeat at the hands of the technologically superior Confederation. Instead, humans had proven to be the ultimate adaptable species, turning each defeat into a learning opportunity and each captured piece of alien technology into a new weapon in their arsenal. The battle for Epsilon Eridani would prove to be a turning point in the war, though few realized it at the time. As the human fleets dropped out of FTL on the edge of the system, they were met with a sight that would have been unimaginable just 2 years prior. A Confederation armada so vast it seemed to blot out the stars themselves. Captain Zora Chen, commanding the flagship of the Third Fleet, felt a chill run down her spine as she surveyed the enemy forces. "My God," she whispered, "there must be thousands of them." Her XO, Commander Thomas Reyes, nodded grimly. "Looks like they're done underestimating us. They're here to end this war, one way or another." Zara steeled herself, pushing down the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. "Well then, let's make sure it ends our way. All ships, Battle Formation Delta. Prepare to deploy Chimera drones on my mark." The Chimera drones were another product of humanity's wartime innovation. Semi-autonomous combat units that could mimic Confederation energy signatures, sowing confusion in the enemy ranks. As the first wave of drones launched, Zara watched with a mixture of pride and apprehension. They had never deployed the chimeras on this scale before. If they worked as intended, they could turn the tide of the battle. If not, she pushed the thought aside. There was no room for doubt now. The initial clash was chaotic and brutal. Confederation ships, momentarily confused by the Chimera drones, found themselves under attack from multiple directions. But the aliens adapted quickly, their superior numbers allowing them to absorb the first human assault without breaking formation. For hours, the battle raged across the Epsilon Eridani system. Human ships darted in and out of the fray, using their superior maneuverability to strike at the lumbering Confederation vessels before retreating. But for every alien ship they destroyed, it seemed 2 more took its place. As the human fleets began to falter under the relentless Confederation assault, a desperate plan was formed. Captain Chen, her ship badly damaged and venting atmosphere, made a decision that would go down in the annals of military history. All remaining ships, she broadcast on an open channel. "This is Captain Chen. Prepare for Operation Trojan Horse. I say again, initiate Operation Trojan Horse." Commander Rice looked at her in shock. "Captain, that protocol is untested. We have no idea if—" "We're out of options, Thomas." Zora cut him off, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "If we don't try this now, we lose everything." Operation Trojan Horse was a last-ditch tactic, born from the desperate minds of human engineers pushed to their limits. It involved overloading a ship's quantum drive, creating a localized field of warped space-time that could, in theory, trap and destroy anything caught within it. As the remains of the human fleet pulled back, Zora's damaged flagship limped towards the heart of the Confederation armada. Alien ships, sensing victory, moved to intercept. "Quantum drive at 200% capacity and rising," Rise reported, his voice tight with tension. 300%, 400%. We're approaching critical mass." Zora closed her eyes, offering a silent prayer to whatever forces might be listening. "For Earth," she whispered, then opened a channel to the enemy flagship. "To the Confederation commander, you should have left us alone." With that, she gave the final command. The quantum drive erupted, tearing a hole in the fabric of space itself. The effects were beyond anything the human scientists had predicted. A sphere of twisted space-time expanded outward, engulfing dozens of Confederation ships in an instant. Those caught in the periphery were torn apart, their structures unable to withstand the gravitational forces at play. When the effect finally dissipated, nearly half of the Confederation fleet had been destroyed or crippled. The remaining alien ships, stunned by the unprecedented attack, began a disorganized retreat. The battle was over. Humanity had held the line at Epsilon Eridani II, but the cost had been enormous. Captain Chen and her entire crew were presumed lost, along with thousands of other brave men and women who had given their lives to secure the victory. As news of the battle spread, its impact rippled across both human space and the Galactic Confederation. For humanity, it was a moment of bitter triumph, proof that they could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful forces in the galaxy, but also a stark reminder of the terrible price of that standing. In the halls of the Confederation Assembly, the mood was one of shock and growing fear. Zaxril, the Neri diplomat who had once called for humanity's containment, now found himself advocating for a different approach. "We have grievously underestimated these humans," he addressed his fellow representatives, his tentacles waving in agitation. "Their capacity for adaptation and their willingness to sacrifice are beyond anything we have encountered. If we continue this war, I fear it will lead only to mutual destruction." But there were many in the Confederation who disagreed, who saw the Battle of Epsilon Eridani II as proof that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist as a free species. The war, they argued, must be prosecuted to its bitter end. And so the conflict raged on, spreading to more star systems, claiming more lives on both sides. Humanity continued to innovate, driven by necessity and the primal urge to survive. The Chimera drones were refined, becoming ever more effective at disrupting Confederation operations. Project Thunderbolt finally bore fruit, producing weapons of such destructive capability that their use was hotly debated even in the face of extinction. But with each victory, each technological breakthrough, humanity found itself changed. The species that had dreamed of peaceful exploration of the stars was being forged into something harder, more militant. Some, like Admiral Tanaka, worried about what they might become in order to survive. 5 years into the war, as the list of casualties grew ever longer, and the borders between human and Confederation space became increasingly fluid, a new complication arose. Reports began to filter in from the fringes of known space of a third force entering the conflict. An ancient species, long thought extinct, stirring from eons of hibernation. As humanity and the Confederation bled each other white, this new threat gathered strength in the shadows. The true test of both species was yet to come, and it would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the very future of intelligent life in the galaxy. Admiral Tanaka, reviewing the latest intelligence reports in her lunar office, felt a chill of premonition. The war with the Confederation had forced humanity to adapt and grow stronger, but at a terrible cost. Now, it seemed, the real challenge was only beginning. She turned to her aide, determination etched on her face. "Contact the diplomatic corps. It's time we try talking to the Confederation again. Because if these reports are accurate, we're all going to have much bigger problems very soon." As the aide hurried to carry out her orders, Tanaka turned to look out the window at the Earth hanging in the void, beautiful and fragile. She couldn't help but wonder, in their quest for victory, had humanity and the Confederation both lost sight of what truly mattered? And would they realize it in time to face this new threat together, or would their mutual enmity doom them all? The answers to these questions would shape the course of galactic history for millennia to come. An uneasy peace. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Confederation buzzed with tension. Representatives from 100 alien species filled the tiered seating, their diverse forms a testament to the vastness of life in the cosmos. At the center of it all, on a raised platform, stood two figures: Admiral Yuki Tanaka of Earth and High Counselor Zaxril of the Neri, lead negotiator for the Confederation. 7 years of brutal warfare had brought them to this moment. Both sides were exhausted, their resources stretched to the breaking point. The emergence of the precursors, an ancient species awakening from millennia of hibernation, had forced a revaluation of priorities. Now, human and Confederation representatives gathered to forge a peace that neither fully wanted but both desperately needed. Zaxril's tentacles rippled with barely contained emotion as he addressed the assembly. We stand at a crossroads, his translator conveyed in a dozen languages simultaneously. The war with humanity has cost us dearly. Millions dead, worlds ravaged, and for what? To contain a species that has proven, time and again, that it cannot be contained. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many nodded in agreement, while others chittered or growled their dissent. And now, Zaxril continued, we face a threat that may dwarf even our conflict with the humans. The precursors stir, their motives unknown but their power undeniable. We must ask ourselves, can we afford to continue this war on two fronts? Admiral Tanaka stepped forward, her face a mask of calm determination. The people of Earth and her colonies have no desire for further bloodshed. She began, her words carefully measured. We fought because we had to preserve our freedom and our very existence. But we are not conquerors. We seek only to live in peace, to explore the stars as equals among the galactic community. A hush fell over the assembly as Tanaka's words sank in. For many, it was the first time they had heard a human speak not in terms of battle strategy or defiance, but of peace and coexistence. We propose a ceasefire, Tanaka continued, followed by negotiations for humanity's entry into the Galactic Confederation as full and equal members. In return, we offer our full cooperation and resources in dealing with the precursor threat. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some representatives cheered, while others rose in protest. The idea of accepting humans, the species that had fought the Confederation to a standstill, as equals was radical, even terrifying to many. As the debate raged in a quiet corner of the assembly hall, two unlikely allies were deep in conversation. Dr. Ilara Voss, Earth's foremost xenobiologist, found herself in an intense discussion with Krelix, a Joraxian philosopher renowned across Confederation space. You must understand, Ilara explained, her eyes alight with passion, humanity's adaptability, our drive to overcome challenges. These aren't just traits that make us formidable in war. They're the very qualities that allowed us to survive and thrive on our homeworld, and they're what will make us valuable allies in peace. Krelix's compound eyes glittered as he considered her words. Perhaps, he chittered thoughtfully, but can you blame those who fear you? In less than a decade, your species went from unknown primitives to a force capable of challenging the entire Confederation. How can we trust that such power won't be turned against us again? Ilara sighed, understanding the weight of his concerns. Trust must be earned, on both sides. But consider this. If humanity and the Confederation can move past our conflicts, think of what we could achieve together. Our innovation, your ancient wisdom and technology. We could usher in a new golden age for all species. As Ilara and Krelix continued their discussion, their words began to attract attention. Other representatives drifted closer, listening intently to the exchange of ideas between human and alien. It was a microcosm of the larger debate playing out across the assembly, fear and mistrust slowly giving way to cautious curiosity and hope. Back on the main floor, the negotiations had reached a critical juncture. Zaxril and Tanaka stood face to face, the fate of two civilizations hanging on their next words. We are prepared to accept humanity into the Confederation, Zaxril announced, his tentacles undulating in what Tanaka had come to recognize as a sign of stress. But there must be conditions, safeguards to ensure that your species' remarkable capabilities are not turned against us or used to dominate other races. Tanaka nodded, having anticipated this. We understand your concerns. What do you propose? The terms laid out by Zaxril were stringent. Limitations on the size of human military forces, restrictions on certain technologies developed during the war, and a probationary period during which humanity's actions would be closely monitored by the Confederation. As Tanaka listened, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride in how far humanity had come. Just years ago, such terms would have been unthinkable. Humanity would never have been considered powerful enough to warrant such precautions. Now they were being treated as a potential equal, albeit one viewed with caution. "We will need time to consult with our government," Tanaka replied carefully. "But speaking personally, I believe these terms could serve as a starting point for further negotiation." The assembly hall erupted in a cacophony of reactions. Some representatives cheered the prospect of peace, while others warned of the dangers of trusting the humans. But beneath it all was a palpable sense of relief. The long, grueling war might finally be coming to an end. As the formal proceedings concluded, the real work began. Diplomats from both sides huddled in small groups, hammering out the details of the ceasefire and the framework for humanity's integration into the Confederation. The process was painstaking, with every word and clause scrutinized for potential loopholes or hidden meanings. Meanwhile, on Earth and across human colonies, news of the peace talks was met with a mixture of joy and apprehension. Vids of Admiral Tanaka addressing the Confederation Assembly were broadcast on every channel. In bars and living rooms, on military bases, and civilian outposts, humans debated the merits of joining the very organization they had been fighting for nearly a decade. Maria Suarez, a veteran of the Battle of Epsilon Eridani Ui, watched the broadcasts from a rehabilitation center on Mars. Her cybernetic arm, a replacement for the one she'd lost in the war, clenched as she listened to the terms being proposed. "Limitations on our military," she muttered to her fellow patients. "After everything we've sacrificed, how can we trust them?" Her words echoed sentiments being expressed across human space. The war had forged humanity into a united, militarized society. The idea of surrendering any of their hard-won strength was difficult for many to accept. But there were others who saw the ceasefire as an opportunity. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, the admiral's brother and a leading expert in xenotechnology, gave an impassioned interview on the global news network. "This is the moment we've been waiting for," he insisted, his eyes shining with excitement. "Yes, the terms may seem restrictive now, but think of the knowledge we'll gain, the advancements we can make, by working alongside the Confederation rather than against it. The stars themselves are the limit." As the negotiations stretched on, taking weeks and then months, a fragile peace began to take hold. Confederation and human ships, which had been trying to destroy each other for years, now found themselves conducting joint patrols against precursor incursions. Scientists from both sides started cautious collaborations, each wary of revealing too much but eager to learn. Yet beneath the surface, tensions remained high. On frontier worlds and space stations, where humans and aliens began to mingle, centuries of ingrained xenophobia clashed with the need for cooperation. Bar fights and diplomatic incidents threatened to unravel the delicate peace on more than one occasion. The situation came to a head 6 months into the ceasefire. A human colony in the Ta City system, still rebuilding from a Confederation attack years earlier, refused to allow a Confederation peacekeeping force to land. The standoff quickly escalated, with both sides calling for reinforcements. Admiral Tanaka, now serving as humanity's chief liaison to the Confederation, found herself racing to defuse the situation before it could reignite the war. As her ship entered the Ta City system, she was struck by a sense of déjà vu. It was all too similar to the first contact scenario that had started this whole conflict. But this time, things would be different. Tanaka opened a channel to both the human colonists and the Confederation fleet. "This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka," she began, her voice steady and determined. "I'm here to remind everyone of what we're working towards. We've all lost too much, sacrificed too much, to let fear and mistrust drag us back into war. I'm coming down to the surface, unarmed, to meet with both sides. Let's talk this out, face to face, as the allies we're trying to become." As Tanaka's shuttle descended through Ta City's atmosphere, she couldn't help but reflect on the long, strange journey that had brought humanity to this point. From a solitary species confined to one world, to star-faring warriors, and now to potential members of a galactic civilization, it was a transformation beyond anything their ancestors could have imagined. The peace they were building was fragile, fraught with challenges and suspicions on both sides. But as Tanaka stepped onto the soil of Ta City, greeted by wary faces both human and alien, she felt a glimmer of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could forge a future among the stars that was worthy of all they had endured. As negotiations began anew on this distant world, the fate of humanity's place in the galaxy hung in the balance. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. Crisis on the Frontier. The Helios space station hung in geosynchronous orbit above the swirling storms of Neptune, a gleaming testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. Once a military outpost guarding the outer reaches of human space, it now served as a symbol of the uneasy peace between Earth and the Galactic Confederation. Commander Sarah Chen, daughter of the legendary Captain Zora Chen, stood at the viewport of the station's command center, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond. 2 years had passed since the ceasefire, and while open hostilities had ceased, true peace remained elusive. Status report, Sarah called out, her voice carrying the same authoritative tone that had made her mother famous. Lieutenant Aisha Okafor responded promptly. All systems nominal, Commander. Confederation liaisonship maintaining standard orbit. No unusual activity detected in the sector. Sarah nodded, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It was almost boring compared to the constant state of alertness they'd maintained during the war. Almost. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Aisha's fingers flew across her console, her eyes widening in disbelief. Commander, we're picking up multiple distress signals from the Kuiper Belt mining outposts. They're under attack. Sarah's body tensed, muscle memory from years of combat training taking over. On screen. Now. The main display flickered to life, showing grainy footage from the outpost's security feeds. What Sarah saw made her blood run cold. Sleek, predatory ships of unfamiliar design swarmed the mining stations, firing indiscriminately at both human and alien structures. Those aren't Confederation vessels, Sarah muttered, her mind racing. And they're definitely not precursors. Aisha, contact Lunar Command and the Confederation liaison. Inform them we have unknown hostiles attacking civilian targets. We're moving to engage. As Helios Station erupted into a flurry of activity, preparing for combat for the first time since the war's end, Sarah couldn't shake a nagging feeling of déjà vu. It was all too reminiscent of the border skirmishes that had ignited the conflict with the Confederation years ago. But this time was different. As Helios' defense fleet undocked and began accelerating towards the Kuiper Belt, they were joined by the Confederation liaison ship. Captain Xarlon, the Arcturian commander of the alien vessel, opened a comm channel to Sarah. Commander Chen. Xarlon's gravelly voice crackled through the speakers. We stand ready to assist. These attackers threaten the peace we've all worked so hard to build. Sarah felt a surge of unexpected emotion at the alien's words. Appreciated, Captain Xarlon. Let's show these raiders what happens when they mess with both humanity and the Confederation. As the joint fleet approached the battle zone, the true scale of the attack became apparent. Dozens of the unknown ships darted between the mining outposts, their weapons leaving trails of destruction in their wake. But it wasn't mere destruction they were after. Sarah watched in horror as the raiders lashed onto several of the stations, forcibly extracting them from their orbits. They're not just attacking, she realized aloud. They're abducting. Slavers. The revelation sent a chill through both human and Confederation forces. Slavery was one of the few practices universally abhorred by all spacefaring races. Its resurgence here, on the fringes of civilized space, was an affront to everything the fragile peace stood for. What followed was a battle unlike any Sarah had experienced before. Human and Confederation ships, which only years earlier had been trying to destroy each other, now fought side by side against a common enemy. The raiders were skilled, and their technology advanced, but they hadn't counted on facing a unified force of battle-hardened veterans from two of the most powerful factions in the galaxy. Sarah's voice rang out over the comms, coordinating the assault with a precision that would have made her mother proud. Confederation cruisers, focus fire on their engines. Human fighters, use your maneuverability to keep them off balance. Let's show these bastards what happens when they threaten our people. The tide of battle slowly turned. One by one, the raider ships were disabled or destroyed. But even as victory seemed within reach, Sarah realized the true stakes of the conflict. This wasn't just about stopping an attack. It was a test of the alliance between humanity and the Confederation. How they handled the aftermath would determine the future of their fragile peace. As the last of the raider ships was cornered, Sarah made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. All ships, ceasefire, she commanded. Let's take this one intact. We need answers more than we need vengeance. The captured raider vessel was brought aboard Helios Station, its crew detained under Joint Human Confederation Guard. As Sarah and Captain Xarlon approached the holding cells, they exchanged a look of mutual understanding. Whatever they discovered here would shape the course of galactic politics for years to come. The lead raider, a reptilian being with iridescent scales and cold, calculating eyes, regarded them with disdain. "You've made a grave mistake," it hissed through a translator. "Our people have long memories and longer reach. This is but the beginning." Sarah leaned in close, her voice low and dangerous. "No, you're the one who made a mistake. You attacked civilians under our protection, and in doing so, you've given us a common enemy. Now you're going to tell us everything: who you are, where you came from, and who sent you." As the interrogation progressed, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The raiders were part of a coalition of outlaw species and rogue factions, united by their hatred of the Galactic Confederation and their fear of humanity's rising power. They sought to destabilize the peace, to reignite the war that had nearly torn the galaxy apart. In the days that followed, as news of the attack spread, reactions across human and Confederation space were mixed. Many saw the joint defense of the mining outposts as a triumph of cooperation, proof that the two former enemies could indeed work together. Others, however, used the incident to stoke old fears and resentments. On Earth, political pundits debated fiercely. "This attack proves we need a stronger military presence in the outer systems," argued retired General Helena Voss on a popular news broadcast. "We can't rely on the Confederation to protect our interests." Her debate opponent, Ambassador Rahim Khalil, countered passionately. "On the contrary, this incident shows exactly why our alliance with the Confederation is so vital. Together, we're stronger than we ever were apart." Similar discussions played out in the halls of the Galactic Confederation Assembly. Some representatives praised the quick response and effective cooperation between human and Confederation forces. Others warned that humanity's combat prowess, demonstrated once again in the battle against the raiders, made them too dangerous to trust fully. Amidst the political turmoil, Sarah Chen found herself thrust into the spotlight. Her actions during the battle and her decision to capture, rather than destroy the raider ship, had made her a symbol of the new era of cooperation. She was summoned to Earth to brief the United Earth government, and then to the Confederation capital to address the assembly. Standing before the gathered representatives of 100 alien species, Sarah felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The attack on our mining outposts was not just a crime against humanity or the Confederation. She began, her voice steady and clear. It was an assault on the very idea of peace itself. But in facing this threat together, we've shown that our alliance is more than just words on a treaty. It's a commitment to a shared future, one we're willing to fight for. Her words resonated across the galaxy, inspiring hope in those who dreamed of a unified future and grudging respect from those who still harbored doubts. But even as Sarah spoke of unity and cooperation, new challenges were emerging on the horizon. Reports began filtering in from the fringes of known space of increased precursor activity. The ancient species, awakening from their eons-long slumber, were becoming more aggressive, probing the defenses of both human and Confederation worlds. And in the shadowy corners of the galaxy, the defeated raiders' allies plotted their revenge. determined to shatter the fragile peace no matter the cost. As Sarah left the Confederation Assembly Hall, she was met by an unlikely pair, her mother's old friend, Admiral Yuki Tanaka, and the nary diplomat Zaxrill. The human and alien stood side by side, a living symbol of how far their peoples had come. "Well done, Commander," Tanaka said, a hint of pride in her voice. "But I'm afraid your work is just beginning. We have a situation developing that requires someone with your unique perspective." Zaxrill's tentacles rippled in what Sarah had learned to recognize as an expression of concern. "Indeed, the precursors are on the move, and we have reason to believe they may be connected to the raiders you encountered. We need a joint task force to investigate, someone who can bridge the gap between our peoples." Sarah straightened, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with a new mission. "I'm ready, Admiral. What do you need me to do?" As Tanaka and Zaxrill began to brief her on the developing crisis, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the strange twists of fate that had brought them all to this point. The war that had nearly destroyed them had also forged them into something stronger, something united. Now, facing threats from both ancient awakened species and new coalitions of chaos, that unity would be tested as never before. The frontier of space, once a battleground between humanity and the Confederation, had become the crucible in which a new galactic order was being forged. And Sarah Chen, daughter of heroes and protector of the peace, stood ready to face whatever challenges the universe had in store. As the three of them, human, Neri, and the bridge between worlds, walked together towards an uncertain future, the stars seemed to shine just a little brighter, full of both promise and peril. A new understanding. The vast chamber of the Galactic Confederation's High Council was filled to capacity, the air thick with tension. Representatives from every member species sat in tiered rows, their diverse forms a living tableau of the galaxy's incredible variety. At the center of it all stood Commander Sarah Chen, her crisp uniform a stark contrast to the colorful array of alien dignitaries surrounding her. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of covert operations, tense negotiations, and startling discoveries. Now it all came down to this moment. High Counselor Zaxrill, his tentacles rippling with barely contained agitation, called the assembly to order. "Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Confederation, we face a crisis unlike any in our long history. Commander Chen of Earth has uncovered evidence that threatens the very foundations of our alliance. Commander, you have the floor." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed the assembly. "Thank you, High Counselor. What I'm about to share will be difficult for many of you to hear, but the future of not just our alliance, but of all sentient life in the galaxy, depends on us facing this truth together." With a gesture, Sarah activated the chamber's holographic display. Images and data streamed forth, painting a picture of conspiracy and ancient secrets that left the assembly in stunned silence. "Our joint task force has discovered that the recent attacks by raiders and the increased precursor activity are not separate issues, but part of a coordinated effort," Sarah explained. "An effort orchestrated by a faction within the Confederation itself." Gasps and shouts of disbelief erupted from the gathered representatives. Sarah pressed on, her voice rising above the commotion. "This faction, which calls itself the Eternal Vanguard, believes that humanity's rapid advancement poses an existential threat to the established order of the galaxy. They'd been working to manipulate events, to push us back into war, all while awakening and controlling dormant precursor technology to use as a weapon against both humanity and the Confederation as a whole." The chamber erupted into chaos. Accusations flew back and forth, old grudges and suspicions bubbling to the surface. It was everything the Eternal Vanguard had hoped for, discord that could shatter the fragile peace. But Sarah wasn't finished. "I understand your anger and your fear," she shouted, her voice cutting through the tumult. "But this is exactly what our enemies want. They're counting on us to turn on each other. Instead, I'm asking you to do something much harder, to listen, to think, and to hope. Gradually, the noise subsided. All eyes turned back to Sarah as she continued her presentation, laying out the evidence her team had gathered. She spoke of hidden bases where precursor artifacts were being studied and weaponized, of secret communications intercepted between Eternal Vanguard agents, and of the true nature of the precursors themselves. The precursors weren't just an ancient species, Sarah revealed, her voice filled with wonder and trepidation. They were the first attempt by the galaxy itself to achieve sentience. And now, thanks to the meddling of the Eternal Vanguard, that consciousness is awakening again. Fragmented, confused, and potentially hostile to all life. The implications were staggering. The assembly sat in stunned silence as Sarah laid out the full scope of the threat they faced. It wasn't just about humanity or the Confederation anymore. The very fabric of the galaxy was at stake. As Sarah's presentation came to an end, an elderly Jiraxian representative rose, his exoskeleton creaking with the movement. "Commander Chen," he began, his translator conveying the gravity in his tone, "your evidence is compelling, but it leaves us with an impossible choice. How can we trust humanity with the power to help us face this threat, knowing how quickly you've advanced, how formidable you've become in such a short time?" It was the question at the heart of everything, the fear that had driven the Eternal Vanguard to such desperate measures. Sarah felt the weight of countless alien eyes upon her, waiting for her response. "Trust," Sarah said softly, "is not about eliminating risk. It's about believing that what we can achieve together is worth that risk." She paused, looking out at the sea of alien faces. "Humanity's history is full of darkness, it's true. We've fought wars, we've destroyed ecosystems, we've let our fear and anger drive us to horrible acts. But that's not the whole story." Sarah's voice grew stronger as she continued. "We've also created art that can move beings across the gulf of species. We've made scientific discoveries that have revolutionized our understanding of the universe. We've looked at the stars not with fear, but with wonder and hope." She gestured to the images still floating in the holographic display, human and Confederation ships fighting side by side against the raiders, scientists of a dozen species working together to unravel the mysteries of precursor technology. "This is who we are too. We're not just warriors or conquerors. We're explorers, artists, dreamers. And yes, we advance quickly. We adapt. We push boundaries. But isn't that exactly what's needed in the face of this threat? A species that can think in new ways, that can help the Confederation evolve and grow stronger." A murmur ran through the assembly as Sarah's words sank in. She could see the conflict in their alien features, the struggle between fear and hope. "I'm not asking you to trust us blindly," Sarah said, her voice softening. "I'm asking you to work with us, to let us prove, through action and cooperation, that humanity can be the allies you need, the allies we all need, to face this threat and build a better future for every sentient being in the galaxy." As Sarah finished speaking, the chamber fell into a profound silence. The fate of the galaxy seemed to hang in the balance, waiting for someone to make the first move. It was Zaxril who finally broke the silence. The Neri diplomat, who had once called for humanity's containment, now floated forward, his tentacles moving in a complex pattern that Sarah had learned to recognize as deep thought. "Commander Chen speaks wisely," Zaxril said, his translator conveying the gravity in his tone. "We stand at a crossroads, not just for our civilizations, but for the very future of consciousness in our galaxy. The threat we face is beyond anything our ancestors could have imagined. To meet it, perhaps we must embrace change, even if that change comes in a form we find frightening." One by one, other representatives began to speak up. The Arcturian ambassador, her crystalline form shimmering with internal light, pledged her people's support for a joint operation against the Eternal Vanguard. A grizzled Jiraxian war veteran offered to share his species' ancient defensive technologies with human engineers. Even the representatives of species that had suffered the most in the war with humanity began to cautiously voice their support for greater cooperation. As the tide of opinion turned, Sarah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. It wasn't a complete victory. There were still those who voiced doubts, who called for restrictions and safeguards. But it was a beginning, a foundation upon which a true alliance could be built. In the days and weeks that followed, the galaxy saw changes at a pace that would have been unthinkable just years before. Joint Human Confederation task forces were assembled to root out the last holdouts of the Eternal Vanguard. Research teams, combining the best minds from 100 species, worked tirelessly to understand and communicate with the awakening precursor consciousness. Humanity, for its part, embraced its new role with characteristic adaptability and enthusiasm. The same drive that had made them formidable enemies now made them invaluable allies. Human artists collaborated with alien counterparts to create works that spoke to the shared experiences of all sentient beings. Human scientists, unburdened by centuries of established theory, made breakthrough after breakthrough in fields ranging from faster-than-light travel to zero-point energy extraction. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were setbacks, misunderstandings, and moments of crisis that threatened to undo all the progress that had been made. The awakening precursor consciousness, fragmented and confused, lashed out in ways that tested the resolve of the fledgling alliance. Through it all, Sarah Chen found herself at the center of the storm. Her unique background, child of war heroes, trained by both human and Confederation mentors, tested in battle and in diplomacy, made her a vital bridge between worlds. She traveled from system to system, mediating disputes, coordinating joint operations, and always working to strengthen the bonds between humanity and their alien allies. 5 years after her fateful presentation to the Galactic Confederation, Sarah stood once again in the Great Assembly Chamber. But this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her stood representatives from every major species in the Confederation, including several that had once been humanity's bitter enemies. Together, they watched as the final vote was tallied. The motion on the floor, to formally recognize humanity as full and equal members of the Galactic Confederation, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. As the final yes vote was registered, the chamber erupted into a cacophony of cheers, trills, and other alien expressions of joy. Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Admiral Tanaka, now Earth's official ambassador to the Confederation. "We did it, Sarah," the older woman said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It's really happening." Sarah nodded, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "It's just the beginning," she replied. "We have so much work ahead of us." As if to underscore her words, a priority alert chimed on her communicator. The precursor consciousness was stirring again, this time in a system near the galactic core. But as Sarah looked around at her alien colleagues, no, her friends, she felt not fear, but a surge of determination and hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in a grand cosmic adventure. The road had been long and bloody, marked by war and mistrust, but it had led them here, to a future brighter than any of them could have imagined. As the assembly began to disperse, each representative heading off to prepare for the work ahead, Sarah took a moment to look out the vast windows at the star-filled sky beyond. Somewhere out there, the next great challenge was waiting. But for the first time in a long time, the galaxy was ready to face it united. The human experiment, that curious blend of adaptability, creativity, and indomitable spirit, had not just survived its trial by fire. It had helped forge a new destiny for all sentient life. And in doing so, humanity had finally, truly come home to the cosmos.